support. So thank you both. So welcome everyone. As you'll note, we do have a Twitter hashtag. So if you are a tweeter, then please do feel free to tweet as we go through the session, or perhaps afterwards. Thank you very much. So what I'd like to do now, if I might, is to introduce our contributors today. So if you wouldn't mind moving on a slide, please, Cara, thank you. I'm absolutely delighted that I'm joined here today by a number of people who are involved in the scheme. So welcome to Kate Robertson, who is the Middle East and Syria Programme Advisor at Cara. And Kate will talk a little bit about Cara and its work with the Syrian academics. I'm delighted also to welcome Wayne Morris, who works for our library service here at the university. And Wayne and his team have been absolutely instrumental in helping us get to this point where we're able to launch the scheme. So welcome, Wayne. And we're also absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Fatah Shaban, who actually, I think at the moment is actually in Syria. So I'm hoping that our connection will be strong enough to enable you to join us and to contribute. And he's going to talk a little bit about what this scheme will mean to him and his fellow participants. And I'm Kath Camps, and I work here at the university. I'm based in the Centre for Enhancing Learning and Teaching, but my role here in the scheme is as the fellow scheme coordinator. So as you know, Carl and Sophie are helping us with technical support. So if you do have any problems, then please put your queries into the chat box and they will endeavour to support you. And I'm also delighted that Dr. Mike Chick is here. He's going to ensure that we don't fail to pick up any comments or questions in the comment or chat box as we go along, because we do definitely want to answer any of your queries. Thanks, Mike, for that. That's fantastic. Thank you. So could we move on, please, Carl, to the next slide? Thank you very much. So I'm just going to set out here really what we're hoping to offer in this session. So we'll start off by sharing with you what the new USW Cara Fellow Scheme offers. And we're thinking here obviously of participants on Cara's Syrian programme. Then Kate will highlight the work that Cara and the Syrian programme undertakes, and also how USW and other UK universities support that important work. And I'm, as I said, delighted that Wayne's going to speak to and show us and tell us a little bit about the complex obstacles that he and his colleagues have overcome in order that we can share this scheme and we can proceed with it. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And as I said, Dr. Chapin will talk a little bit about what this scheme will mean to him, because it's really important in terms of continuing academic work as scholars. And that hopefully we'll have time at the end so that you can have the opportunity to ask questions of our contributors. So that's the overall plan, and let's hope as long as the tech gods like us, we shall be able to fulfill that. So thank you. If you can move on, please. Thank you very much. Thanks, Carl. I'd like to just say a little bit about what prompted the creation of this Cara Fellow Scheme. And I think it's perhaps interesting for you to know a little bit about that, because actually when I joined the university, and that is now in 2018, I was interested to know what USW's involvement with Cara was. And the reason for that was that I was involved with Cara's Syrian programme at my previous institution. And there was lots of things I found out about USW. I found out, like lots of other HEIs, we've been a supporter of Cara for many years, and also that our Chancellor, Dr. Rowan Williams, is also a patron. So I could immediately see that USW was very committed to Cara. And this, along with being an institution of, interested in widening participation and supporting refugees in particular, made me think that actually USW was an institution that would listen very carefully to a particular project that would enable displaced academics to continue their work. And so therefore, because I was involved in the Syrian program previously, I was really keen to enable Syrian academics to be able to gain access to peer-reviewed work, enabling them to maintain their currency as scholars. So I took advice and opinion, as you do, from peers across the institution about the feasibility of potentially raising a project that would enable those on the Syrian project to have access to e-resources and such like. And they suggested that I approached Julie Lydon, the Vice-Chancellor, and I wanted to ask if, in fact, we could have an honorary fellow scheme, very similar to the one that the university operates anyhow. And could we do that in a way that would offer Syrian refugees affiliation to the university, enabling them to have that all-important access to e-resources? And I'm really, I'm still amazed and pleased to say that, she immediately, without any hesitation, said yes. And so then began the long road to this point. And it is a long road. It has taken us over 2 years to get to this point, but we have actually been able to do that because of the work and commitment of people across the university. And actually a central team in that has been the library service, who started that very long process, and Wayne will tell us more about it, of gaining permissions from license holders. So I think that I really have to say thank you to them, but also to many other people across the institution who've contributed to enabling us to get to this point today. Some people have done lots of work, but all of it has been crucial. And, I can only offer my heartfelt thanks to them for that. Could we perhaps move on, please? So what exactly does the USW Cara Fellow Scheme offer? Well, I think, I'm really pleased that we've been able to secure a number of things. The university is going to offer affiliation for 5 years in the first instance. And following that, that can be renewed for a further 5 years as necessary. And that length of time, I think, reflects the fact that people who are often displaced are displaced from their country of origin for a very long period of time, regretfully. And we wanted to enable our USW Cara Fellows to feel that they have a commitment from the university and that actually they can plan long term. Obviously, if things improve and they're able to return to Syria, wonderful is what I would say. So, but we very much sought that agreement, bearing in mind we know the length of time it takes for people to return and rebuild their lives. We also wanted them, as I mentioned before, to have access to a range of USW online resources and to be able to access and have an email address, obviously, and to be able to say they are affiliated to the university. And we thought that there's a potential as well. There's a potential to contribute to the life of the university. And that might be through a number of ways. We think possibly there's a potential to undertake research, perhaps, with colleagues here, maybe to offer some teaching, and maybe there might be a visit, a research visit, an exchange, if you like. But all of this, of course, is dependent on the schools and the faculties and the fellows. At this stage, we're thinking about it, and we know that this is likely to be an organic growth, and it will depend very much on the interests of everybody concerned. So what actually then are the criteria? How do we decide who should be a USW Cara Fellow? And I think this is very much where the partnership comes in with Cara and the Syrian program in particular. So one of the key things that the people who are being put forward for fellowship have to show is that they are a keen and active participant in the program. And that is monitored regularly anyhow by Cara. Obviously, in order to assist academics to continue their work, we have to ensure that their discipline, that their interests align broadly with our portfolio offering, because otherwise we won't have access to that all-important resource base. And of course, we do need to ensure that they're able to take advantage of the e-resources available. So they do have to have and pass through a threshold in terms of their English language. So I'm really delighted to say that this scheme is being launched today, will have initially, we think, 34 fellows, and they are going to, these prospective fellows are currently going through the process of being introduced to faculties and schools, and we hope actually to be able to send out offers of affiliation over the forthcoming weeks. So we are moving behind the scenes to actually offer that all-important affiliation soon. And we very much welcome the possibility of supporting further academics on the programmes over the forthcoming years. So I'd very much like now to hand over, if I might, to Cara's Kate Robertson, who will tell us more about Cara and its Syrian programme in particular. Kate, I have to say, has been marvellous. She's walked with us here at USW through the Lifetime as List project, and we are absolutely very grateful for her continued support as we move forward into operationalising it. So, Kate, welcome. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please, Carl, for Kate, that would be grand. Kate, are you still with us? Kate, I don't know if you're with us. I can see you should be with us. I don't know if you're on mute.
Yes, apologies. I'm not familiar with Teams. Apologies for that start. Anyway, what I was trying to say was I love the fact that Kath is thanking the whole world when actually she's been both the instigator and the driving force behind this brilliant new fellow scheme. So Kath, the thanks is all ours to you and of course to your colleagues. As Kath has said, my name is Kate Robertson. I spent nearly 10 years as Cara's Deputy Director, initially building up the Cara Scholars at Risk UK Universities network, overseeing the Cara Pathfinder grants, which were awarded to UK universities to allow them to establish coordinated internal systems to respond effectively to refugee scholars, although the whole Universities of Sanctuary movement has now really taken that forward, which is great. And then my final task was to set up and run the Iraq program, which I did from 2006 to 2012. But to provide you with some context on Cara's origins, William Beveridge, who was then the director of the London School of Economics, was said to have been sitting in a cafe in Vienna reading a newspaper when he came across an article reporting the forced removal of Jewish academics from German universities. So on his return, he galvanized a number of the great and the good, both academics and politicians, to found what was then known as the Academic Assistance Council, essentially a rescue mission to help relocate persecuted academics and allow them to continue their work in safety. The inaugural public meeting was run at the Royal Albert Hall in October '33, and Einstein gave his famous speech, Science and Civilization, which is the name given to Cara's annual lecture series now. At the time, it was envisaged that the work of the AAC would only be needed for a couple of years, but clearly, nearly 90 years on, history has proved otherwise. Of the 1,000 or so who were rescued by Cara in the 1930s and 40s, 16 went on to become Nobel laureates and hundreds more leaders in their fields and fellows of the Royal Society and the British Academy. Cara has maintained excellent relations with both those entities, and they will be partnering a Syria Programme Symposium in early December this year, at which the research carried out by Syria Programme participants will be showcased. You see the Hitler's gift, the extraordinary nature of these first Cara beneficiaries or AAC beneficiaries was such that they were known as Hitler's gift. And several of them went on to found their own academic dynasties, such as the physicist and Nobel laureate Max Born, whose son, the pharmacologist Professor Gustav Born, held chairs at both King's College London and Cambridge, and whose granddaughter Georgina Born is now Professor of Music and Anthropology at Oxford University. Even. As Cara approaches its 90th anniversary, it continues to provide a lifeline whenever and wherever world events place academics in the line of fire, from its origins pre-World War II to the Hungarian uprising, Cold War, apartheid South Africa, Latin American junta, Rwandan genocide, and more recently, Iraq, Turkey, Yemen, and Syria, with Myanmar and Hong Kong currently in Cara's sights. The Cara Scholars at Risk UK Universities Network has continued to be grown over the years, led by Stephen Wordsworth, Cara's CEO since 2012, and now includes 121 universities committed to supporting Cara's work. Over 200 persecuted academics are currently being hosted by network universities in PhD or postdoctoral placements as part of the Cara Core Fellowship Programme, with full fee waivers and, where possible, in-kind support such as accommodation. Network universities, of which of course USW is one, also support Cara's country programs, recognizing and facilitating contributions by their staff and co-funding 8-week research incubation visits, by which we bring Syria program participants to the UK to build those relationships, to build networks, and to establish collaborative research projects with hosting faculty members. However, the most impressive of all this is really the number of university experts who, regardless of institutional support, have shown extraordinary solidarity to their Syrian colleagues, adopting multiple roles on a voluntary basis, such as mentors, PIs, workshop facilitators, English for academic purposes, tutors, readers, course developers, editors, and much, much more, of which, of course, Kath is an extraordinary example. Next slide, please. The Syria program was initially launched in mid-2012 as part of the Cara Core Fellowship Program, but with an increasing number of Syrian academics seeking Cara's help, I flew out to the region to undertake consultation visits in the 3 main receiving countries, so Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey, with the aim to understand the nature of the need and to decide whether Cara could respond to it effectively and how that might happen. And the main challenges identified at that time were that Syrian colleagues had what, not intending to insult it, but what I would call a skewed academic profile, in that their role was simply to teach. So they had no real research background, professional isolation, given that they had left their countries, and it had been a very closed system. And then limited English language, essential to their being able to engage in the wider academic world. So the Syria program in region was eventually established in Turkey, where the greatest number had sought refuge, with the aim to sustain, connect, and facilitate the continued academic development and contribution of Syrian academics whilst in exile. Research provides the main framework through which needs are addressed and these aims are achieved, coupled with weekly EAP group and one-to-one activities to try and progress the English language, both so they can access journal articles, and present at conference and engage with colleagues within the wider international academic community. The program is now in its 5th year, with 500 Syrians registered on the database, of which over 40%, so that's 200 plus, who are directly involved in one or more of the Syria program activities, which again is the EAP, English for Academic Purposes, academic skills development, research incubation visits, and research collaborations where they are partnered with experienced UK-based academics. So it's part of a learning process by doing. This is a group with a vital role to play in the future of Syria. It represents a major part of Syria's intellectual capital, But it is also playing an important part in the immediate, not just in terms of the research that it is carrying out, that they are carrying out, but a number of RSP participants who cross the border, the Turkish-Syrian border, on a weekly basis to teach in 2 universities in non-regime areas in the north, which are both working to sustain access to higher education for local and displaced populations, despite the circumstance and the odds in which they're functioning. At its most basic, the Syria program provides a space that acknowledges the academic profiles and careers that so many have been forced to abandon in exile. As importantly, it connects them to each other, as well as to colleagues from the wider academic arena. Only a small proportion of those in exile manage to secure work in local universities, and then often not within their own disciplines and with very little security. Over the past 4 years, 60 research grants have been awarded. We've got another round that is just coming to fruition where we hope to award at least another 20 to 25. And this research is primarily looking at issues of direct relevance to Syria and Syrian populations in exile in the region. So very diverse areas, and I should say that the Syria program participants really do span the full spectrum of disciplines. So food security, energy security, integration and psychosocial needs of Syrian refugee children attending Turkish schools, protection of cultural heritage, recycling of concrete rubble as a reconstruction material, deforestation due to conflict and the consequences of that. So these are just a few of the very many studies that have either been carried out and completed or are in the process of being completed. One of the shifts that has happened, and very much with thanks to the faculty members who've been supporting the Syria program, is they're taking work that has been initiated within the program and putting in successful bids to third-party funders. The Global Challenges Research Fund has been a particularly suitable one given its ethos of collaboration of equals, but unfortunately the recent UK government overseas aid cuts has badly affected that. But nevertheless, it means that there have been what we refer to as spin-offs, so that the Syria program participants have been able to participate as paid researchers, facilitated by Cara, in research, again, around Syria. So Cara's brokering role has also been important in opening up some of these new opportunities. I began in 2014-15 reprimanding most of the UK researchers for carrying out research on Syria without the involvement of any Syrian colleagues. But now the program, I'd like to say, is increasingly seen as the conduit through which to reach Syrian colleagues and is also facilitating their involvement by providing them with an institutional umbrella, a legal umbrella. So effectively, Cara is one of the named partners in these third-party funding bids. And that is one of the areas that the new USW Cara Fellow Scheme will be able to gap, because it is actually providing them with that all-important higher education affiliation. A lot of the funders simply won't allow individuals without affiliation to be brought on board as research team members. The other thing we're seeing is in this 5th year of the program is the emergence of Syrian-led initiatives. So there is the Academic Center for Development and Peace Studies, which was established by 2 of our Syria program colleagues and is based in Gaziantep. And there is the associated agricultural initiative, which is named the Syrian Academic Expertise, which is currently collaborating with Sussex University on a small knowledge transfer project using podcasting to enable experts in exile within the agricultural world to share their knowledge with farmers in the northwest of Syria who've lost the support that they used to get through the regime, because they're now located in non-regime areas. As I've said above, there has been an extraordinary group of academics and EAP experts who've been supporting the program. So I believe we now have over 400 on registered and committed to supporting in various different roles. not just in the UK, we have some in Austria, one from Mexico, one in Tasmania, so we've spread beyond the UK borders, but all very much committed to supporting their colleagues. In terms of the USW Cara Fellow Scheme, well, Kath has given you some good insights to that, but as I say, the all-important element is the affiliation to an institution, but also gaining access to online resources, as many of the Syria program participants simply don't have that ability when they're involved in research to do literature reviews and access journals. So again, a massive thanks to Kath and her USW colleagues, and I believe that the USW Library Services deserves also a special mention, so my thanks to them. Next slide. Yeah, I just wanted to leave you with these images. Oops. Sorry, my phone has gone off. These images, they were done by a Syrian cartoonist, political cartoonist called Ali Farzat. And they capture in essence the situation of intellectuals and academics living in police states. He himself was abducted by the Syrian security forces, beaten up, had his fingers broken because Assad did not like his cartoons, and was left for dead. I'm delighted to say he was rescued by a passing vehicle who saw him on the side of the road and is now happily living in exile and continuing to irritate the Assad regime. So I just thought these two cartoons really sort of captured the realities of academics in police states. Thank you very much. Kath, I think you're muted.
Thank you for noticing. It's catching, obviously. Thank you. That's grand. Thank you. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions at the end for the splendid work that Cara does. So thank you very much, Kate, for that. So I'd like, if I can please, to ask Wayne to offer some insight to the tremendous work. And I would certainly concur with your observation, Kate, about the need for a special thanks to the library team. They have done tremendous work, and I hope, Wayne, you would kindly share with us the work that you and your team have been doing. Thank you, Cara.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to represent the work of the Library Services team, who've supported Cara Fellow scheme for the last, well, 2 years, I think, since Kath first approached us. Can you see my screen, please?
Yep.
Okay, then. I'll make a start. Yes, Kath got in touch with us about 2 years ago, explaining the scheme, or the proposed scheme as it was then, and we were very keen to get involved. In library services, we offer over 500,000 online resources to students and staff at the university, including books, journals, journal articles, abstract and indexing services that enable staff and students and researchers to discover content that's been published in their area, and very many more resources, including law reports, conference proceedings, and so on. So the challenge for us was to try and make that available to the Cara fellows. So of that 500,000 or so resources, a number are free, but the vast majority, indeed nearly 400,000 resources, are actually behind a paywall from thousands, or hundreds rather, of vendors and publishers. Most, or indeed all of these, have various license agreements that limit access to the content in those resources to USW students and staff only. And for the most part, there's no reference in there to what we might identify as people falling into the Cara fellow category. So the challenge for us is to work out how access can be granted to the fellows, to the folk in Syria. What we found was we wondered whether any other university had gone down this road and could provide some insight for us. But what we discovered actually that there was little or no other universities that were currently offering access to their resources to refugee academics. So we needed to start this on our own. The result was we contacted well in excess of 50 vendors and publishers who maintained access to over 200 collections of resources. And this is the sort of response that we got. It actually took us about 6 months or so to contact the vendors, explain what we wanted to do, and then chase up vendors who weren't replying. But this is the sort of response rate. And for the most part, vendors were only too happy to provide additional access to the refugee academics. And you can see there's the resource categories that we have. We are waiting a response still from some vendors, and we are actively chasing those up. And then just a small minority of vendors required an additional payment from the university to enable access. What I wanted to highlight then was what we've been able to achieve in terms of allowing Cara Fellows access to the content that we have. And you can see on the left-hand side there, we have many different types of resources, from books, conference proceedings, journals, newspapers, and so on. And for the most part, we've been able to open up access to that content to the Cara Fellows. And I've just highlighted a couple of figures that I think are perhaps significant. Almost 250,000 books are available now to Cara Fellows, and over 56,000 journals and their articles are now available to Cara Fellows. The resources are right across the breadth of the subjects taught and researched at the university, including business, the creative industries, law, psychology, STEM subject areas, and the social sciences. And then I just wanted to pick out a few key resources that colleagues may identify. A large engineering database and journal collection in IEEE Digital Library. Medline, that most people will be familiar with, a large medical database. Psych Articles and Psych Info, the two key resources for discovering research in psychology and the journals that they are published in. Sage Research Methods is very heavily used here at the university, and both Scopus and Science Direct are core science and business titles that enable discovery of content in those areas. The next steps for us are just to ensure that we have a bespoke interface for the Cara Fellows to use these resources from, and we are actively pursuing publishers to ensure that access to more content is made available. And as we acquire new content, ensuring that access to Cara Fellows is always one of the features of the agreement that we try to agree. The other thing that we've done then is we've engaged with GISC, who are a national body really, who represent UK universities in terms of licensing arrangements with publishers and other content providers. And they have been very interested in the work that we are doing. With the idea that there will be specific single licensing models for these subject packages that will enable other universities to offer access to their content to refugee academics too. Finally, I should say a thank you to some colleagues in library services. In particular, I'd like to single out Jane Benjamin, who's done much of the work to contact the various vendors and publishers, explain to them what it is we want to do, and for the most part has been successful in gaining access to our content for the Cara Fellows. And of course, Kath Camps, who's really been a driving force in bringing this to fruition. And finally, I should thank actually the vendors and publishers themselves, who for the most part have felt this has been a very good idea and have only been too willing to help. Okay, I think that's all I would like to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Wayne. I really do appreciate all the work that your team has put in. I think just looking at that that slide with all the people that you've contacted and the result of your percentage of resources we're now able to offer, I hope gives an indication of the time and the patience that it has taken. So thank you so much. Thank you. I hope now we can pass over, please, to Dr. Shaban, who will be able to offer perspective as a prospective Cara Fellow. I don't know, Feta, are you with us, please? Are you able to speak?
Yes, yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Fantastic. So are we able to, Wayne, are you able to take down your?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for you, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk in this session. I'm sorry, I'm now in Syria without my laptop, so I couldn't prepare slides. I have just taken some notes, so I'll improvise. Actually, my name is Fatih Shaban. I was awarded a PhD degree in human geography in Egypt in 2013. But because of the war in Syria and unrest it had brought, I couldn't get back to my original university, the University of Aleppo. So I decided to come to live in Turkey with my family in 2014. Actually, at the time, I felt frustrated, discouraged, and disappointed at that situation because I had tried many times to find work in Turkish universities, but I couldn't. I'm an academic, but I wasn't able to work as one. But once I started communicating with Cara in late 2016 and was part of an international academic society, I found myself again. Actually, I attended the first workshop of Cara Syria program in Istanbul in early in 2017. From there, I've been effectively participating in all 6 strands of Cara Syria program. I have attended many workshops, training, online sessions. I have conducted research. Also, I was awarded a grant by Cara. It wasn't easy. It was very competitive. Anyway, also Cara has secured a tutor from Edinburgh University to teach me English, and I got a higher education academic fellow with thanks to Cara and Kent University. Actually, also Cara facilitated a research incubation visit for me to the University of Sussex in 2019, which was very useful for me. Now, when it comes to this fellowship scheme, one of the most valuable parts of this fellowship is to have an affiliation with the University of South Wales. I think you know, for us as academics in exile, we lack affiliation. Most of us are not working with universities or academic institutions, so we don't have affiliation. So we can't, now with this fellowship, we can, for me, I can introduce myself as a fellow of USW and publish research papers and build networks. Also getting an email address from the university will help me also. You know, it is, you can say it is an official email when you communicate with other people. Actually, access to online resources is very important also for us, for me, because now I don't have any access to the online resources, and we need such access, because when we conduct any research, any paper, you know, we need papers, we need books, we need resources, references, and now such a fellowship will help me to get such access. Also, most of all, I need to actually, I hope that this fellowship will help me to get back to my main field, because I'm a geographer. I've been involved in many studies related to the higher education, and I conducted several studies in this field, but actually I am a geographer. I found myself in the higher education studies field spontaneously. So I hope that this fellowship will help me to get back to what I do best. For us also, such a fellowship will be very important to continue developing our skills and building networks with British academics and upskills ourselves. Actually, for us, it is very difficult now to plan for our future. I hope that one day I could get back to my country and to participate in rebuilding Syria. Our situation now is precarious. We don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I do hope and dream that one day, when the war is over, I will get back to my country. And I believe that we need to keep and develop our academic skills. And I hope that this fellowship will help me to do so. Finally, I would like to thank Cara and the University of South Wales. I'm so grateful and happy, so grateful to both of them for their support. Actually, if it wasn't for such support, you wouldn't see me here. I wouldn't be where I am today. Actually, words seem futile, so feeble. I can only say thank you for the honor of inviting me to be a fellow of the University of South Wales. Thank you. Over to you, Kat.
Thank you very much for that. I'm really pleased that you were able to join us, and I'm really pleased to hear your position, and I can only thank you for offering your insight there. Thank you very much. So we've come to a point now where I think we can, you've heard from our contributors today, but I'd very much like to open up the the conversation, if I might. I think that we're a very small number in the room, so it would be really nice if we were able to take the mics off, if that's possible, please, Carl, so people would be able to ask questions themselves, if that's possible.
Yeah, all the microphones are on if people want to ask questions.
Thank you so much, Cara. So can I ask, please, if people have a comment or if people would like to ask a question, would you kindly pop your hands up, and then we'll invite you in to ask that question or comment.
Kath, it's Mike here.
Oh, hi, Mike. Yes.
I would just like to say thanks to everyone who spoke so far. This has been fascinating again, and really touching as well. But Barry Llewellyn has a question in the chat box, but I'm not sure if she'd like to ask it using her mic. Well, perhaps not. I don't know if you can see the chat box, Kath.
I can. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so Barry says, thanks to you, Fatih, saying your story is so very powerful. But she asked a question about what can we do? How can people help out? And I think that's a really, really good question. I don't know, Kate, you talked very much in your segment about the work that people do. How would you like academics to get in touch or to see if they can contribute at all?
There are many roles in which we have wonderful volunteers, but actually the key one tends to be around research, where we partner up Syrian study teams with the blurring between mentor and PI has become increasingly blurred, because effectively the roles are pretty much the same. But we're now working with co-mentors for each study team. As I was saying, we have a call that went out in December. Those who were interested in submitting for that call were partnered up before the process of developing the proposal, because we realized that actually that support at that stage was invaluable. And we've had 32 submissions. We've been looking for independent expert reviews for each one of those, 2 for each. So that we've been hunting down 64 UK-based academics predominantly to provide that role. That role is an important one, both in terms of informing the final selection, because the selection committee doesn't cover every discipline or every area within those disciplines, but also because capacity building is fundamental to the Syria program. So we feed back that the independent expert reviews to the Syria teams, whether or not they are successful, because all the time we're trying to build up. One area where we have not been as effective as we should have been is that the feedback is not always fully understood. So that would be a great place to have people come on board specifically to take on that task once the latest rounds of awards have been announced. If anybody wants to volunteer for that, that would be great.
Thank you, Kate. So are there any other comments, please? I see, Barry, you've popped a further question into the comment box. Thank you. So, Kate, you wanted to know if there's a website, and Barry and Kate's popped that in. Fantastic. Thank you. Are there any other comments, please, or questions for our contributors today?
Please, Kath. Barry,
Yeah.
I have asked a question about what they can do for us. For me, actually, the most important thing for me now is to visit the UK and other another university in the UK again, because I believe that what Cara have done for me when I visited the University of Sussex was very, very useful for me. But it was just for 5 weeks. I know that the resources are limited for Cara, but it was fantastic, very useful for me. I hope that one day I can stay in British University for a long time. I don't like to stay there. I just would like to stay for a long time. I would like to get back to my country anyway. But for Syrian academic in general, Syrian academics in exile, please support Cara, because Cara have done a lot for us. Most of what we need now as academics in exile, Cara has done for us. So I hope that your universities could support Cara well.
Thank you. And I think in terms of visiting, it's quite complex, but I know that Kate Cara does a lot to facilitate that wherever possible. Brilliant. So Mike, you popped a question into the chat box. Would you like to ask that?
Yeah, sure. As we can see, I was wondering about academics who are, forced to flee to safety from persecution or danger or harm in other countries. Are there any similar schemes, or plans to expand this scheme for those academics? And also, do we know if any other universities are planning on following USW's lead on this? I guess the two questions are for you and Kate, actually.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a good question about planning to expand the scheme to academics from other countries. I hope that I would like to think there wouldn't be the need, but we know unfortunately there will be probably a need to extend such support to other academics who might need support from Cara. And I think that certainly is something that we would want to look at in the future. I think at the moment the link is with the Syrian program, but I don't think we would want to ever preclude thinking about possibly extending that, Mike, where there was a need. And I'm sure our work with Cara will enable us to build on that. In terms of will other universities possibly follow USW need? As Kate, I see, has put something into the chat box saying that she hopes that they will follow our lead, and I hope so too, because obviously we can only offer this for academics who have disciplines that are very similar to our portfolio offering. And as we know, there are many parts, many other disciplines that we do not offer here, and that would be a really good thing if other universities pick it up as well. And I think that's where the work that the library services has done, that Wayne and your team, Wayne, has done, will enable that process hopefully to be much shorter if they decide to do something similar.
Can I ask two more questions? Or is anybody else waiting? Sorry.
Can I just answer? So it's Katie. I just wonder if I can just add an answer to that, both in terms of Barry and your question. Sorry, I'm totally fixated on the Syria program, but of course, Cara has the core fellowship program and has recently launched a mentoring scheme for those that it brings to the UK on PhD or postdoctoral placements. So I'm sure that if you write to info@Cara, that they would be welcoming anybody who was willing to volunteer. The other thing is that actually one of our wonderful volunteer facilitators, Dr. Marion Heron, who works at Surrey, has been pumping Kath for how she managed to do what she managed to do, in the hope that she can push that forward within the context of Surrey University. So we're sort of waiting to see where that goes, but it does need somebody as pig-headed and as belligerent as Kath to keep driving and knocking on doors to actually make these things happen.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mike. Yeah.
No, please go on.
I was just going to say, Barry popped something into the chat box I can see about plans to share practice with others. I think we'd be delighted to share practice with others, and particularly the work that's been done, that Wayne, you've done, I think that's where that knowledge of how to navigate this, all these license agreements is absolutely vital. And I think it's, I don't know, have you shared, I believe you have shared some of this work that you've done with others, Wayne? Am I right in saying that?
No, we haven't. We've certainly spoken to JISC, but we've not had any other conversations with other university libraries just yet. We're not aware of others actively trying to open their resources to other their library resources to refugee academics, but of course we are willing to share what we have learned. I think JISC can play a key role in this as well, as acting as a sort of central hub for coming up with model licenses to ensure that each university doesn't have to act independently, but there's a ready-made license available. That's the way to go, I think.
Thank you, Wayne. I sincerely hope that your team will write up and share the magnificent work that you've been doing. I think that would be a great gift to the rest of the sector. Sorry, Mike, you wanted to?
Yeah, I've got lots of questions, but I'm very aware that I shouldn't interrupt. I'm the moderator. But if nobody else is asking, I do have two questions I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Firstly, I was going to say it does sound like such an innovative, important, certainly, listening to Fatah's description of it, a really important project. So I hope you can get something written up to inspire other universities to follow suit. We have to keep sending the messages out about schemes such as this. And secondly, I was, listening to Fatah and his desire to work closely in the UK. At the same time, as you said, where it's a complex process, I'd like to pick any colleagues' brains here who could give us some insight into what are the actual steps involved in bringing about a visit from Fatah or any Syrian academic who desires to spend some time at a British university. What are the actual steps involved in making that happen? Where does one even begin?
Kath, it might be useful if I
was hoping you might, Kate, please.
Stepped in there. I'm delighted to say that having had a couple of refusals, that's UK visa refusals, there is now an arrangement with the UK VI in terms of any Syria programme participants that we want to bring to the UK on an RIV, a research incubation visit, sorry, too many acronyms. So from our perspective, it's about, there has to be some funding on the table. So Cara Syria programme has some funding for RIVs. In fact, we've been diverting it simply because of the pandemic not allowing us to bring folk over. The last person we brought over was stuck in Cardiff for 3-4 months, longer than he should have been there, unable to return because all the flights had been cancelled. So it's a difficult time to do it, but it needs a good match. It absolutely has to be a good match, otherwise it's not worth pursuing. So Fatah's comment about wanting to really sort of pick up on his original world of geography, human geography, I think there needs to be a very good match there. There has to be a willingness to not just provide it, but actually to embrace the individuals who turn up so they become part of the community, if you want. Cara always looks to an RIV as an opportunity to develop a research proposal so that the relationship, if you want, between the host department and the individual who will return to their country of exile at the end is not just stuck within that brief period. we are not always as successful in managing that. We have had some that are brilliant and they've gone on to do lots of research together, and others that have not been as effective. But that's the idea. You know, the more of these networks that we can help to build up for the time when it's possible for Syrian academics to return to Syria and be part of rebuilding the higher education sector, the greater their contacts and networks outside, the more effective, in the same way that when we bring Syrian academics together to try and build up discipline clusters, you know, one academic on their own is fairly limited in what might be achieved. But if you have a group of academics with good connections outside of Syria, then you've got a whole body there you can draw on in terms of developing curricula or setting up departments. So those connections into the longer term are really important. But getting them over is the easy bit in theory. And just to give you a sense of the cost, we put a maximum of, at the moment, 2 months for visits, because that doesn't scare the UKVI. And we put a price tag of around 5,000. A lot of universities find that, if they recently joined Cara, find that quite a useful way to dip their toe into the Cara world without being overcommitted. And most of those that have hosted, or I would say 75% of those who have hosted, have put half of that money in the pot, or provided accommodation, or found ways to support financially and in kind.
Does Cara offer advice on the whole process, Kate?
Cara actually leads the process. All we need is a letter of invitation outlining what the involvement would be. And once we have that, we then write a grant award letter, usually for the full sum, even if the university is contributing something. And then we take the individual concerned through the process of completing the online UKVI application form. So the big issue for us is just to identify a university that is willing to host, and an individual who is a really good match, or a department that is a very good match.
Clear now, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. That's really helpful. I'm aware of the time. I just want to offer out, if anybody has one more burning question to any of our colleagues here, then please do say, and we can we'll invite you to make a comment or to state your question. I'm going to take silence as meaning that there's nothing currently burning that people would like to say. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who's attended for joining us. I particularly would like to thank our contributors today. And of course, it goes without saying, everybody's contribution to getting us to this point where we can offer these this fellowship, this scheme, that we can certainly enable people to become affiliated academics with the USW and to be able to continue their academics career. And we're delighted that we will be welcoming people over the next few weeks, and indeed over the next few years, to be part of the USW family. So thank you everybody for coming. And if you have any queries, any questions, then please get in touch, obviously with any of us individually, but also to, I'm more than happy to meet up and discuss anything about the scheme and the work that colleagues within the university are doing to support Cara. Okay, thank you everybody. Hope to see you again soon at the remaining, perhaps, 2 Refugee Week sessions that we're running this week. Thank you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kath.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good to see you, Fatih.